Giggles podcast. We're back. We are back for another episode. Today's episode, we're going to be going back to another listener question. So today's one, in the light of where the CrossFit season is, I think this is a really good timed question, well-timed question here. So today's question, as a newbie going into my first comp later this year, I'd love to hear your recommendations for comp day nutrition. Awesome question. And like I said, the timing of this one is really good because there's a lot of local comps going on. I know in WA there's a lot of local comps starting up at the moment, and then we've got the affiliate cup coming back over as well. So we've got some teams, some pair comps, some individual comps. So this is actually a very well-timed question for anyone that's not just for a newbie going into their first comp, but this could also be applicable to people that have done heaps and heaps of comps and want to try and get the most out of their competition, because nutrition is going to be one of the big factors. So, on that note, I'm going to hand it over to Jono, and we're going to break it down a little bit further than just the comp day.
Yeah, great segue. I also agree. Just quickly, tangent already. I'm pretty sure
That didn't take long.
Perth, I'm pretty sure, runs the most comps out of the CrossFit season. Like, there are so many. Like, Brisbane's got a fair bit. I never really hear of much in Melbourne and Sydney. Adelaide has about 5 CrossFit boxes total. So, and then, I don't know about Canberra. But anyways... Sorry.
I feel like you guys are closer along that coast. So even if there was one in like Wollongong, or if there was one in Gold Coast or Brisbane, or like, you could quite easily venture between.
Yeah, it is. It is pretty easy, but it's still like there's so much going on. Like, as soon as the games are over, even before the games are over, Frantic's like, boom, let's go. And then you're just like...
They don't stand a chance.
Just a few weeks after another, there's heaps, which is really cool. So this is a good time question. So we're going to look at it just a little bit more from the days preceding the comp. So this is more, now obviously 6 to 8 weeks, preferably more. You've probably been prepping pretty well. But if you're like any uni student and you procrastinate, then at least get the last week or few days leading into the comp right. Because if you are not fueled properly going into the comp, there's not a lot you can do to fix it. Obviously, that's not a hard and fast rule, but if you're coming in fueled off KFC and Chocky milk, then probably only the KFC is going to let you down. Chocky milk will always be there.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to fix it the day of if you haven't done any prep work prior. And one thing that I would recommend is, in the weeks leading up to the comp, would be having a play around with like some of the stuff that we're going to talk about here, having a play around with it, because each person is slightly different. So I know personally, I actually work very well off a small to moderate amount of carbs. If I have too much carbs, then I feel it's counterproductive for my performance and recovery. So I know that I can overdo it if I'm eating heaps of like high glycemic index foods, so like heaps of sugars and stuff like that. So this is where I'd recommend for everybody to actually play around with it yourself. Actually look at the amounts that you're having and the timing of it, and you can get right down into the nitty-gritty of it, but without practicing or playing around with it yourself, you're never really going to know.
Yeah, I'd agree. I would say I thrive off carbs, but that's not even on comp day. That's just daily.
Yeah.
So for me as well, we're already going on to comp day. Nope, we're bringing it back to the week. All right, so the week preceding. So on comp day, just to touch on that quickly, your protein's probably not, and your fats are probably not going to be the biggest priority, considering they're the slowest digested macronutrient. now we'll go into the variables soon. So leading up to the comp, you're probably going to get a decent amount of benefit if you're focusing on working on like a higher protein intake and a higher fat intake. There's the whole thing back in the day, especially when I was cycling, it was called carb loading. I'm now on the fence with that because I've spoken to people and I've read some stuff that is like no research papers. I'll go out and say that that's fine, but the people I talk to are basically just research papers with legs.
Walking research.
Yeah. And it's not Wikipedia. And they're also on the fence, or some of them are hard against it or hard for. That sounds dirty. They are all for.
We'll reword that one.
All for carb loading. And so again, it's pretty easy. You carb load with rice the night before, and then you go train the next day. This is in your testing time. And if you feel great, awesome. If you don't feel great, then there's your answer. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Your body's going to tell you exactly what it likes and what it doesn't like.
Yeah. So yeah, in the weeks leading up to the comp, that's where I would test out those sorts of things, because personally, carb loading I know doesn't work for me. If I have the right amount of carbs in the day before a competition or even the day of, I feel way more alert, way more switched on, and I feel like I perform better and recover better, as opposed to if I have too much. So if I've got like a bag of snakes next to me and I'm eating rice and like I used to have heaps of creamed rice. That used to be my go-to. So if I was eating creamed rice and then lollies and then I was having Gatorades and like carbs on carbs on carbs, I would actually feel worse than if I just had the right amount of carbs. So that's where the weeks before I would recommend playing around with it and like go, oh, this Gatorade says it has 64 grams of carbs in it. I'm going to have this and see how I feel. And then in 2 days' time, have half and see how you feel. Or have 2 of them and see how you feel. And play around with it in the weeks leading up to it. The weeks leading up to it. So the weeks leading up to it, have a play around with it and experiment with yourself and see what you feel works better for you and see what you operate better with and what you recover better with as well. Because I know that, carb loading does not work for me.
Yeah.
From personal experience.
Carb loading works for me. However, carb loading with carbs, with pasta, any kind of pasta, it's the worst decision ever. However, if you've been training for a while and you care about your nutrition, and you've been focused on it, you probably already have somewhat of an idea of what works for you and what doesn't. And so it's not going to be as big of a test for you. You might just be like, oh, cool, there's this new supplement out, or there's this, I want to give that a go. And there's those little tweaks that you can make. But if you've got a dial where you're like, you know what, I feel pretty good day in, day out, and I can perform in training, then that's probably a good indicator that you're going to perform just as well, if not even better, when you come to comp day, because of just the pressure of comp day.
Yeah, so I've heard along the internet that there's a recommendation of a roughly 1 gram of carbs per kilo of body weight is a really good starting point for the meal before you're working out. So if you're training of an afternoon and you can have this meal with, I'm 100 kilos, so I'll have 100 grams of carbs. I have that meal 2 to 3 hours before my training session, and then you can kind of get a feel for yourself whether or not that works for you. Whether you feel good during the session, whether you feel good after the session, leading into the session. Obviously, the better quality carbs that you can have there, the better. But it's a really good starting point, and then you can kind of play around with it. So if you feel like you weren't fully recovering in between sets or in between your pieces through your training session, then you could up the carbs or you could reduce them, but it gives you somewhere to start. And that would be what I would recommend in the weeks leading up to the comp. So that way, when you get to comp day, you know with a little bit more certainty whether a higher amount of carbs or a lower amount of carbs or what's going to work for you essentially moving into the weekend. But the other thing is, it's also going to massively depend on the comp that you're doing as well. So let's take a couple of the local Perth comps, for example. You look at Frantic Day Out at one end, which is a 1 day comp, and you've got all 6 events potentially crammed into that one day. So the time between events is a lot shorter. So if you're trying to have meals, you're not going to be able to actually digest the food before you have to start getting ready for your next event. So whereas you take a look at Chasing Better, that could be 3 days. So you got your Friday night, Saturday, and your Sunday, and you could have anywhere up to about 4 hours we've seen previously between events. So then, in that sort of circumstance, you can actually have a full meal after event 1, sit down, have your full meal, and you're going to have enough time for that to fully digest before you get back out on the floor for your second event. So it is a little bit event dependent as well, which is going to throw a little bit more of a curveball into what you're eating.
Yeah, I would agree. There are variables, so everything we're going to talk about, we're probably going to miss something like even Kapow brought up something I completely forgot about and I actually only think about when I'm writing everything down for the comps. Is the event that's coming up. So like if I know it's a sprint event, like it's going to be like a friend who does a 50 cal assault bike sprint at the end of intervals. There is zero chance.
I remember that one.
Looking at me in the face and seeing my soul leave my body.
Oh, that was so good.
That was horrendous. But, went for it. That is something that I'm going to be snacking or even having like liquids beforehand because you're going to digest a lot faster than anything solids, especially anything that's got like high protein, high fats. And so if it was just a lifting event, because when I train, I know I can lift on a heavy stomach. I won't have like a steak and everything, but I can have an actual meal or a decent sized snack. That helps a lot more as well. So they are variables to have in mind.
Yeah. And the other thing in there is like you're not going to need anywhere near as much carbs in your meal before that if you're only doing a 1 rep max or a complex or something that you don't need any glycogen for. So the events also do play a really, really big part into what you're going to be fueling yourself with. But
yeah,
I think for a lot of people, you see most people will be smashing back Allen's lollies and snakes and those sorts of things, and I think that's where I've definitely been like in that same position as well, and that's what I've fueled myself with for most of the day, that and caffeine, which did not work well for me. At the end of the day, I'm completely destroyed. I've got nothing left, and the amount of carbs that I'm putting into my body's can't utilize them anymore because it's like way too excessive. So for me, I'm better off having a small meal first thing in the morning, even though typically I don't eat in the mornings, and then hit my first event, and then I will get a protein shake with carbs in there and have that straight away after an event. And it's not much. It's like 30 grams of carbs with a 1 scoop of a protein shake. So it's not a great deal. Then typically I'll look at the time frame between the first event and the next event. And if it's a long time frame, I'll try and get a little bit more of a like substance in, so like oats, like something actually to eat as opposed to just drink. If it's a quick turnaround, then that's when I would pretty much wait until about half an hour before I have to start moving to get ready for the next event, and that's when I'll smash back some quick carbs, so something like your lollies, or have some Gatorade or something in a pre-workout, something with a bit of caffeine in there because I like my caffeine. And haven't you heard?
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So I'll kind of make adjustments throughout the day depending on, one, how I feel and how I feel like I need to recover for the next event and how much the event that I've just done has burnt me out. But then also taking into consideration the total amount of calories, carbs, and protein and whatnot throughout the day as well. So typically, like Jono said, I'd steer away from fats until the end of the day. So if it's a 2-day comp, then I'll smash more fats and protein as soon as I'm finished competing. But throughout the day, they're not really on the radar that much. It's more about the carbs and caffeine.
Yeah, and I think the type of carbs is a very important thing as well because you can get your carbs easily from, I always have gummy bears. I love gummy bears, or think the Haribo sour
Oh,
snake.
ooh,
Thing.
so good.
Dangerous. And I really like them. I feel like the flavors are super sweet. And so it's just nice. Like I can have that when I'm feeling anxious or nauseous from the comps coming up or the events coming up and everything. It's just easy. But my favorite thing, well, in the mornings, I usually will have oats and a banana, oats with honey. I don't have it with milk. I'll do it with rice milk or water, so it's just less on the stomach at the start. And then I'll have 2 scoops of protein with rice milk again, and that will be my pretty much my biggest protein intake until the end of the day. Like once everything's done, regardless if it's a 1 day or a 2 day, 3 day comp, 4 day comp. That's what I'll do as well. And then you monitor it. Like you might feel that you're getting super hungry, and if you're feeling hungry, that's super dangerous. Like you've just got to eat. And if it's around a comp, then you've got to an event, then you've got to make it work. Because if you're starting to feel hungry, you're going to get depleted real fast. Like your body's like, I need something. What you're doing to me is not nice. I'm not enjoying it. So if you want something out of me, you give me something.
If I'm feeling hungry, that's a red flag that I've gone way too long without eating.
Yeah.
Like that's almost a point of like I can't make it back.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Depending on the time for the next event, but if I feel hungry, I'm like, oh man, like it's downhill now. Like even if I put back heaps of food on heaps of like what I should have done 2 hours ago, it's just that little bit too late for me. But I think the thing that catches me out, and this is personally, is I typically don't get hungry, and then I'll forget to eat, and then I'll get to the end of the day, I'll get to like 3-4 o'clock, and that's when it all just hits me. I'm like, I'm so tired, and I'm still not even hungry, but I'm that depleted, but I've forgotten to eat throughout the day, and I've forgotten to. So that's where, when I was talking about looking at the totality of your calories and carbs, if you have, hypothetically, if you have 3,000 calories a day while you're training and throughout your work week and whatnot, and then come comp day, you're only eating 2,000 calories because you forget to eat, it's a no-brainer. Of course, you're going to end up depleted and dying because you should be working out harder in your comp than what you typically do at training.
Yeah.
So whatever your standard day of calories is, I would try and get that in with a little bit extra throughout your training day, throughout your competition day, sorry. And then on top of that, you'd be eating a little bit more at the end of the day as well. So these are the days that I would go for it. Eat heaps. But you still want to be managing your, like when you're eating it and the quality of your food as well. So it's a fine line. Yeah.
I think, and finding things, even so, I love chocolate milk. I don't think that's a secret. I think that's important for me for my birthday. So I'm incredibly grateful.
It's like me and caffeine.
Yeah.
Me and caffeine, you and chuggy milk.
Yeah. However, on comp days, I won't touch it until the end of the day.
Right.
And then, so Sarah, we'll say a plug, sorry, Become Nutrition. She's come up with a chalky milk that I can handle drinking because it's healthy and actually tastes nice. And then she come up. She didn't do it for me, but it just so happened that I was like, hey, what a coincidence. It also has like a rice pudding that is not just rice pudding in a can or the little sisters rice pudding, whatever it is. It's a brand. And it actually feels good. I don't feel heavy on it. I actually feel amazing when I'm having it because I'm getting all the carbs, I'm getting all the good stuff. It tastes so yum. And then I don't get that heaviness. I don't get that gluggishness or anything like that. It's a game changer. So, and I actually just live off that through comps through the day.
See, I'll typically live off oats. So like oats and sultanas. And then I'll normally sprinkle a little bit of protein powder through that as well.
No wonder you're so angry on comp days.
What? I love oats.
Food.
I love oats. But yeah, Hey, what's wrong with oats?
Sultanas. Are you a child?
What's wrong with sultanas? Have you not had sultanas in your oats before?
I probably
Clearly not. Clearly not. They're so good. Anyway, I get what you're saying about the like feeling heavy, And that's exactly how I feel if I have too much carbs.
Yeah.
So that's where I try and put a little bit of substance into, like, calories into my meals with protein, but it's more just to bump the calories up a little bit as opposed to trying to get protein in.
Yeah.
So yeah, but normally, depending on the event, if it's a heavy event where you're just lifting a barbell, not so much. But for most of the CrossFit events that we see, I'll try and smash back a protein shake straight away after with that little bit of carbs. And that just kind of keeps everything ticking over until that next event. And then when I can, I'd squeeze a little bit of a meal in as well. But it depends on, a lot of the times, Frantic's one of those ones where it's really hard to get a meal in. But it's also the only one that I know of that's a one-day comp. So for most of the other ones, you've got a longer time frame between your events. So that's when you typically get your schedule before you start the weekend, and you can go, right, event 1, and then I've got like an hour and 20 minutes, and then it's event 2, and then I've got 3 hours, and then it's event 3. So after event 2, that's when I'm going to plan to put my meal in there, still have my protein shake and my carbs after each event, but that's when I'm going to have an actual meal. So whether that's some rice and tuna, or whether it's oats and sultanas with some protein in there, or something that's still going to be more predominantly carbohydrates than anything else, but an actual meal.
Yeah. And then to close out any day, my favorite thing, not close out a comp, because that's a totally different nutrition plan. Close out a day where I'm going into another day of competition is, I don't know where you're at with it. I love burritos. I feel like burritos tick off everything. You get some veggies, you get your carbs, you get your meats, you get your fats with your avocados and all that stuff. It's game changer. And you know what?
Sneaky plug for Zambreros.
I honestly, I have only come across 2 Zambreros in Brisbane, and it's
you poor thing.
Literally a red flag. I was like, hey, we got to move home.
Yeah.
But not paying the price for Brisbane and Gomez and getting half the size. No one wants that.
Nah.
Zambi's best.
Yep.
Yeah.
100%. Oh.
You guys don't know.
We should see if we can get sponsored by Zambreros.
Please. We need like wide lens cameras by the end of it.
Yeah, I'll be 110 kilos in a month.
Well, you're not far off that anyway.
Hey, whoa. But, yeah, I would 100% agree with that though. So it's then at the end of the comp, I'm all about the pizza.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know why?
I love pizza though.
I'm not, because they do that at the games, and I'm like, So I usually
just for spiteful reasons.
Yeah, it's total ego.
Oh no, I'm all about the pizza. Love pizza.
Like a dirty burg.
Oh yeah, actually. See, now I want to compete just so I can smash back some burgers. Some pizza. Oh, I'll do it anyway.
Cool.
But yeah,
hopefully question.
Yeah, I think we've it can be very challenging to pinpoint exactly how much and when and whatnot, but I feel like that only really comes with experience because everybody's different. So the other thing that I would recommend for anybody doing any comps, and this goes outside of just nutrition as well, is having some form of reflection after your competition. So just asking yourselves the questions like, how well did I recover after event 1? How well did I recover after event 2? What could I do to improve my recovery after event 1, event 2, event 3, so on and so forth? Because if you can highlight, oh yeah, that's right, I didn't actually eat after event 2 and then went into event 3 and I felt like trash. And I'm like, well, it kind of just highlights where you can fix certain things within a competition as well. And then you could do that tangent. You could do that for your actual events as well. So that's where you're going to get the most out of whatever you're doing, is when you can actually have takeaways from the results that you're getting as well.
Yeah. And if this all doesn't help and you only just listen to this for our tangents, then great. I would also recommend, if it doesn't help, if you're still unsure, finding someone that is within the space of CrossFit or functional fitness to help you, whether it's for accountability or guidance or both. Do that. the only reason I say within the space of CrossFit or functional like fitness or sport or whatever is because they understand what your body needs. While this might be mean and say that other people, like other nutritionists, dietitians, whatever, know what to do or the basics, it's always nice being more specific.
Yeah. And CrossFit's a very different ball game compared to, like, if you're looking at a rugby athlete or a cyclist or someone that does, like, CrossFit's a whole different sport. Like, there's not many that you have 4 events back to back to back in one day, and then you get back up and you got to do it again. And
well.
they're completely different energy systems that you could be using. There's not really anything that compares to CrossFit. So if you've got somebody that's in the CrossFit space that can give you a little bit more guidance professionally, then it's gonna, you can't really get that anywhere else.
Yeah. Cool. I think that was.
I think we'll leave it there.
Thank you very much, guys.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Keep them coming. We're actually really enjoying all of the questions that have been coming in.
Yeah.
So keep them coming, and we'll keep on doing our best to answer them.
Yeah. Check out Spotify, the YouTube, Instagram, everything.
Yep.
Really appreciate any love on YouTube. That means you can see Kapow's pretty face. So.
And Gary.
That was his goat's name.
Gary the goat. Yeah. So now you're gonna have to check us out on YouTube so you can see who Gary is.
Yeah. And if not, you should.
Yeah, you should do it anyway.
Just
all right. See you next week. Thanks again, guys.